Hey yo, what is up and welcome to NinjaGeek Games. In this video we're going to be looking at an upcoming Kickstarter campaign from Your Move Games. Now currently the previous campaign is being fulfilled to backers, and that is the Men of Hawkshold part of the Battleground Fantasy Warfare series. Now on the 16th of June, the newest faction, Lords of Vlachold, goes live, and this is a kind of standalone expansion. You can use the content right out of the box or combine parts of this with this. So what is it? Well, Battleground Fantasy Warfare is a tactical wargame for 2 to 4 players where your units are represented by cards and not miniatures. Now each of these cards represents a complete unit of warriors from cavalry, archers and knights, and has all the information you need during battle, from attack and defense stats, movement allowance, damage tracks and special abilities. Now the Lords of Vlachold set represents a gothic horror faction that features vampires, warriors, their mortal thralls and vassals. It brings additional abilities to the game that include being able to drain the living troops to boost your own powers. Now in this box you'll find 72 unit cards, 30 command cards, 6 reminder cards and 2 rule books that are a quick start guide and an in-depth core booklet. So how does it work? Well, each player represents a commander of an army, and you'll build your army, create the battlefield and then deploy your army. During the game you assign orders, move units around and create battles in this highly tactical game. Now in this review we'll take a look at the gameplay rules from the quick start guide from Lords of Vlachold, as well as using some of the components from the Hawkshold set. We'll also have a look at some of the more detailed rules and abilities from the core rulebook, so you get a better understanding of how deep and rich this game actually is. However, before we start, the Men of Hawkshold is available for pre-order from Your Move Games website, and we'll show that here. And we'll have a quick look at the other factions later in this video, but the Lords of Vlachold set is a prototype, so the finished products and components may actually vary. So let's take a closer look. So we'll set the game up as per the quick start guide with some modifications to decrease the size of the battlefield just for this video. As well as the contents of the game, you'll need a dry white pen, some dice and a measuring tape. The first thing you need to do is shuffle and place a common deck of command cards and then choose your faction. For this view we'll use the Tempest Lord Lucan army from Lords of Vlachold and the Baron Dimont from Lords of Hawkshold set. Each player will draw a command card, keep hidden from the other commander, and set up their army as outlined in the booklet after marking each of the cards with the close order. So we've set up the armies here, how they are in their individual rule books, and each of the cards is marked with the close order in the order box. I haven't done it for the Lords of Vlachold card set because they're prototype and the dry white pen might not work on that set. For the advanced game, there are specific rules for creating armies and deploying units, and the quick start guide also has outlines for the exact positions of deployment, but in this video I'm setting up just to give a basic outline of that stage on the smaller battlefield. Each of the rounds in the game has 3 phases that are movement and command, combat and then the courage phase, and a player completes all 3 phases and then play switches to the next commander. However, both armies do get to attack in the combat phase regardless of whose turn it is. So let's take a look at the phases. Now in the commander movement phase, the general of the army gains command points as outlined in the scenario and is also able to move units. Command points are spent on command actions that can change the standing order, where you erase the order that was previously there and replace it with a different one. You can take control of a unit directly, so it ignores standard rules for movement and targeting. You can draw a command card, use a bravery ability, or rally a unit if it's been previously routed. And any combination of these can be used as long as you've got enough action points to spend, and they can also be spent before or after the unit moves. Now the standing order of each unit depends on how it moves and subsequently fights in combat. Any units that are on hold do not move, and some of those units will gain bonuses for having this hold order. Those with the close order will move towards the nearest enemy, and any with range, these are a ranged ability here, but I haven't just written the R here because they're a prototype, will move towards the nearest enemy until they have reached or already are at the range of attack distance. only units with the range stat can have this ranged order. So let's take a closer look at a unit before going on to movement. Each card represents a single unit that has artwork of the warriors, a stat bar for combat, attack and defense, range ability, courage and movement category. The coloured bar at the bottom is the damage track, and this is the command circle for that unit's orders. These lines here are the centre points used for movement, engaging and other game elements, where the card has a front, rear and side centre points. The back of the card has its points value for creating armies, any special abilities and some flavour text. In most circumstances, a unit will move their whole movement towards the closest enemy that's visible. Units can move straight, turn or use a special manoeuvre. Distance is measured between the centre points of the active and target unit, and all movement stats are divisible by card lengths. So here in this example, this unit can turn 2.5 inches and then move another 2.5 inches for their total movement of 5 inches. The ranged unit with the range order, they only move if outside their ranged attack distance. So here their ranged attack is 14 inches, so these units will not move. There are other manoeuvres such as move sideways, reform, where they can rotate in any direction, and about face, where they can turn 180 degrees. But each of these manoeuvres costs a penalty in movement. Now, if a unit starts its movement phase and the distance between that unit and its target is equal to or less than the movement category, it can simply move to engage, known as a final rush. Here it will engage enemies from the front centre point. However, if I'd started here, it would have flanked this side, as this is all dependent on where the active unit centre point is in relation to the target. Now, during the combat phase, units from both armies attack and deal damage simultaneously. Therefore, if a unit receives enough damage to be defeated, it still gets to attack in that phase. Now, for melee combat, the attacking unit needs to be engaged, as shown here. First, we need to roll the number of dice equal to the attacking unit's attack value, and here for the werewolf pack, it's 7. To score a hit, you need to roll equal to or lower than the difference between the attacking unit's offensive skill, which is 5 in case of the werewolf, and the defending unit's defense skill, which is 2 for the militia. In this case, the difference is 3. If any die result in a hit, they are then rolled to cause a wound. So I'll move all the die that don't score hits. This time, to score to wound is equal to or lower than the difference between the attacking unit's power, which for the werewolves is 6, and the defending unit's toughness, for the militia it's 1. Therefore, the target I'm looking for is to score 5 or less, and I've scored 1 hit, and 1 wound is checked on the card. Combat for ranged units is similar but takes place at distance. Now, during combat, units can gain modifiers to stats from command cards, as well as game effects such as if a unit has been flanked or pinched or is charging, for example. After both players have attacked with all viable units, the combat phase ends. In the courage phase, units that took enough damage in the preceding phase have to make a rout check. So here, the unit would need to roll 3 dice and must score equal to or lower than their courage stat. For the militia, their courage stat is 11, so I roll 3 dice and have to score less than 11. I've scored 10, so they have passed the rout check. However, if they'd failed, the unit moves towards the edge of the table, but not before the engaged enemies get to make another attack. The game continues until one side meets the victory conditions, and in the case of the introductory scenario, it's when half of the opposing army's been destroyed. Now, this is just the rules for the quick start guide that's provided in the game, and man, it's a big game. We didn't go into pinching an enemy, how manoeuvres work, field of view and vision, or any of the abilities from units, or additional orders such as hold. Now, the quick start rules provide 2 additional scenarios based on winning conditions from the first one. The Lords of Vlachold faction also introduces new faction types, such as the Warriors of the Mist, a ghost type faction where the movement is unaffected by terrain, and werewolves who always have close order. Now, I've played these scenarios a few times and you're really just mastering the basics, and even this feels a complete game that requires forward planning, unit management and deep tactics. Now, Your Move games also offer starter decks for many factions, and these can include the Orcs, Dwarfs and Undead, for example. A more challenging and rewarding game, you can try the rules from the main rulebook here. Now, this gives you the same rules included in the Quick Start guide, plus 100 pages more. Now, this includes rules for unit status, as well as variants on the range order depending on distance. The standing orders that you give a unit, these can also be modified so that the unit doesn't have to move its full movement capacity, for example, or you can set an objective on a particular location or enemy that changes the way and motive for that unit movement. Also, command points can be spent for additional actions, such as reorganizing your whole army or spending all of your command points to sound the charge. Now, movement has much greater detail here for how to move units to targets who aren't visible, or simultaneously rushing an opponent or attacking enemies with your own unit's flank. Ranged units also have ammo boxes and therefore do have a limited supply of arrows and bolts, and some units can even cast spells. Now, another big part of the game that tests planning and tactics is terrain. You can purchase a terrain deck from Your Move games, and this can add elevation rules, movement restrictions, or bonuses to defense based on cover from the terrain they're in. Now, lastly, and I think is a really exciting part of the game, is creating your army. You agree a points and then select the units that are elite, core, standard, or even mercenaries to create large armies, enough for an all-out war. Now, this can be played for up to 4 players for huge battles, but I've not done that yet. Now, I've not played Warhammer Fantasy from Games Workshop, but I've always wanted to. However, the thought of playing large skirmish games with units, battles and attack things is appealing, but expense painting and crafting has kept me away. But here, it's all in this box. You have loads of units to create a variety of different armies, and a very clever rule set to ensure that each game is very rewarding. Now, I really enjoyed this. I was really happy with the Quick Start game, and the main rules did take time to learn, but damn, they were worth it. I suggest you check out their Kickstarter on the 16th of June, plus their website to look at the monsters who can fly and that terrain pack too. Also, if you enjoy the content of this channel, then please feel free to hit the subscribe button. This has been NinjaGeek Games. Cheers.